We're back. It's us. I'm TJ. That's Zach. This is the Selby's Godcast. Thank you for being here. Zach, we've talked about it before, and it always comes to fruition in those Sunday games, especially last year. It became a running theme. But the themes of the show changed so drastically, and it seems odd to do that in a sport that's surrounded. The entire thing is 162. It's about surviving the marathon. Yet, if we were to come here and do a show after Friday night, it would have had a completely different feel than I think today's show will. Not that today is going to be disaster or anything like that. A split against the Orioles, I'm not too upset about it overall. But it does feel like the entire just sort of mood of the show changes drastically based on the high that you're on in the first two games of the series compared to dropping the next two against Baltimore. What do you think?
Yeah, I've covered football seasons in the past where the game happens, if it's college Saturday, NFL Sunday, and you react, and it is clear, it's cut and dry what the aftermath is, what the mood is, what the consequences are, and you analyze those, and you dive deep into that feeling, and then it's a new week, and you prep for that new game, and you're building up toward it, and then it's the same thing. And you get on this cycle, and it's easy to know like when the peaks and valleys of the week are because of that. And in baseball, so much can change in a couple days. It can be very difficult, especially from my perspective, trying to decide what to write when, what's going to hit the right note at the right time. If you have an awesome feature about some player, you'd rather the player be playing well when it runs than when they're in an 0 for 30 slump. I know from my perspective, I've been gathering material for something, and I finally finished writing it today. And it would see the light of day if they won and they didn't win. And it's just not quite the right time to run it yet then. So, it's tough. And you can't live your life by that 100%. Sometimes you just have to run a story, even if it's not the perfect day. And I think it's also a good reminder of why it's important to take a step back and think about the context of the season or the month or whatever, instead of living and dying by every game. Because even if, for as good as you were feeling late Friday night after taking the first two against the Orioles, and as bad as you might be feeling after losing two in a row to the Orioles, there's another game Monday evening against the Diamondbacks,
Yeah.
And so none of that's going to matter.
But I don't feel bad about dropping the next two against the Orioles, especially Saturday. Saturday felt like a game to kind of get yourself back on track in terms of pitching. Earlier in the series, Vogt had really pushed the foot on the pedal to make sure he got those wins. And, of course, you're facing Baltimore. You've got their ace in the finale of the series. If you've got some wins in hand, chase them. And if you got to go to your bullpen, if you got to go to guys, even in situations that maybe it's not an obvious call for, Cade Smith, again, coming out earlier in a game, kind of occupying that fireman Andrew Miller role. He'll do that because you got to take care of the wins you got in front of you. And this Baltimore offense is going to wake up at some point. And they did. They did later on in this series. And unfortunately, you score 5 runs against one of baseball's best pitchers in Burns today. And, man, you feel like if you score 5 and you chase him after 5, gosh, you want to get those sorts of games. And I know Gavin Williams isn't completely up to speed here, and I want to talk more about just Williams, where he's at. All that, though, Zach, I still feel like you come out sort of with a successful series here. To split it, yes, but also you grab the season series against Baltimore. That could come into play later in the year, and I don't want to understate that. So I don't feel horrible today. Maybe, and if you do, that's fine, but I really don't feel horrible. I feel like, to some extent, maybe not totally, but mission accomplished to come out here and split this series.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of things that way, where like this team is going to the playoffs. So what is the formula to win in the playoffs? How can they make sure that they have this figured out once you get to October? And the starting pitching is still an issue. I mean, it's not like, we talked, I don't want to rehash the trade deadline, but it's still a problem. There are still questions even once Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd enter the fray about what this looks like. And kind of what you alluded to there, having to maybe reset and catch your breath with your pitching staff. Well, a big problem that is hampering this team is that it's hard for them to come back in a game because when they're down, a lot of times they have to throw the long reliever, the Pedro Avila, the Xavier Curry, the Connor Gillespie, because their best case scenario most nights is the starting pitcher goes 5 innings. So you're using Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis and Emmanuel Clase and Tim Herron to get yourself a win. And then the next night, maybe you have some of those guys, maybe you have all of them, but then the third night you certainly don't. And, if this was working the way you'd want it to work, you could get 7 innings out of a pitcher one night, so you only need Gaddis and Clase. And then the next night, maybe it is that 5-inning game and you have to gut through it and you need all those guys. But then the night after that, maybe you still at least have Cade Smith and Tim Herron. And so the problem is when they win, they need all of their relievers. And that's just leading to – it's not leading to overuse because Stephen Vogt's done a good job protecting everybody, I think. But it makes it so that you're hamstrung. You can't pitch these guys every single game. You need your starters to go more than 5, and that's just not happening with Carlos Carrasco and Joey Cantillo, and we'll see more of Logan Allen, and there are questions on how deep Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd can get you, so it's just going to be more of the same.
The odd thing is, to get through the rest of this regular season, it's why we pointed to I liked the Cobb pickup. I thought it was a sneaky pickup, but we both pointed to if you could have just grabbed another quality back of the rotation, innings-eating arm, maybe that doesn't matter come postseason time, but getting to the postseason, it might matter. And the formula that they have to win with is a formula that can work in the playoffs. That's the interesting thing. It's just about limping to the finish line with what they got in their starting rotation. Because once you get to the playoffs, especially if they got that first-round bye, then you've got an ability to lean on that bullpen as much as you want. And you don't have to worry about what you were just talking about with, well, that third day could come back to catch up with you. Well, in the postseason, depending on what your off days look like, you might be able to lean on them. And it's why, if you were putting a tier list together of rotations that you believed in, of all the playoff teams, the Guardians would probably be near the bottom. But you can't completely write them off because if you're talking about bullpens, it's at the top. And they go, 5 arms deep some nights. And so they've got the horses once they're in the postseason. But to me, I want to make sure they get to the postseason with still some gas left in the tank. I'm not sure. I hope so, but I'm unsure.
Yeah, I do think it was important for them to get that tiebreaker over the Orioles. I think it's going to be critical for them to get a first-round bye, as you said. There's some big games lurking here. You have the Diamondbacks for 3, and then that series in Minnesota, that's going to be important. That's one where if you split 4 games in 3 days, that's really good. That does so much for you. But if you lose that series, then things start to get a little nerve-wracking. And I just think you want as little stress as possible for the next 2 months. You need to get healthy. You need guys you want to feel some pressure, and I think that'll happen naturally just because of where they're at and how young this team is. But, they need to not feel like, I know they want to play every game like a playoff game, but you don't want to be pitching Cade Smith for 2 outs in the 4th and the entire 5th inning 3 times a week in August. You need some games where you can breathe. So that's why it's also important to have Tanner Bibee healthy, to have Ben Lively continue to do what he's done, and to get Alex Cobb back and pitching well, even though he hasn't pitched in 11 months.
Yeah, it's kind of what you were talking about earlier, why it's tough to maybe wrap your brain around how to feel coming out of this series. Because, again, overall, I feel like splitting against Baltimore, I'll sign up for that. To win the season series against Baltimore, again, I'll sign up for that. And even in the games that you lost, they were all interesting. It wasn't like Baltimore just knocked your doors down.
Can I ask
knocked
you
them
something?
Yeah, go ahead.
After watching that for 4 games, and I'm sitting here and I have to power rank these teams for the Athletic.
Oh no. So critical that you get that right.
What do you come like? Who's the better team? Or is it someone else? Is it the Yankees? I mean, the Phillies are in a free fall, so I think they're beneath these teams now. If the Guardians would have won Sunday, I was ready to anoint them. I thought, I have not voted them number 1 this season. They've typically fallen. There's about 7 or 8 of us who collaborate on this each week, and the Guardians have usually been 4th or 5th, with the Phillies, Orioles, Yankees, and Dodgers all there too. And I don't know. I was ready to anoint them at number 1. They have the best record in baseball. If coming off of a series win against Philly, quick sweep of Detroit, if they could have taken 3 or 4 from Baltimore, like that would have, even though I have major questions about, it's still August and we're talking sustainability, they would have deserved it in my mind. And they still might. I just having a hard time separating what my eyes have seen and what my brain thinks.
Well, it all comes down to what are rankings? Are they based on what you have accomplished? Or is it believability?
Right.
Is there some projection mixed into what you think? I mean, it's no different than season-end awards. Do you factor in what should have happened, or do you factor in what did happen?
If we're talking about what did happen for that.
Earned run average and preventing runs, well, this guy should have had a 4.10 ERA, but instead it was a 2.45.
Can you imagine if we voted for MVP based on expected batting average, expected slugging, expected WOBA?
We might not be far from that.
No, come on.
Okay, well, then if that's the case, if you're about what has happened, then what has happened is the Guardians are the better club. Yeah. You just sort by the winning percentage. In head-to-head matchups, who's won more?
This is true. And, I mean, they have the best record overall, and they have a better record against the Orioles than the Orioles do against the Guardians.
And you could say, well,
thank you.
Who has the better roster? If you're just looking at, if you're rating every single player who has well, there's lots of teams that have great rosters that don't win the amount of games that the Guardians have won. Do we all agree that the Dodgers have a better roster in terms of talent? But the Dodgers have had their struggles. Or the Yankees, or even the Orioles.
The Guardians are responsible for 20% of the White Sox wins, though. That's
okay.
I feel like they should be penalized for that.
Or do we just throw them out? I don't know what to do with that. In any case, they still count. This rotation will change a lot. Not even just tomorrow with Logan Allen coming back, but in the coming days, you mentioned the names Cobb and Boyd. And then the biggest name that we're all sort of on pins and needles here trying to figure out what's up with Tanner Bibee. How serious is this need to push him back? I've read the quotes. It seems like he's not too disturbed by what's happening. I don't know how I just read him. I don't know how he delivered that. I don't know how confident he sounded. And again, I'm not sure how much I believe him. I'm not saying he's lying, but I would just expect normally for a guy to say, it's not a big deal. Because if you say it enough, maybe you'll believe it yourself, and it won't hamper what you're trying to accomplish. But we've talked about how important Gavin Williams is for this team in the second half, and that still holds true. But that's predicated on Tanner Bibee continuing to be the rock at the top of the rotation. So anytime he has to miss even a start for a few days, forgive me for being a little bit panicked.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the motivation for making a trade at the deadline is you can't just assume everybody you already have is going to stay healthy. And 2016 is the perfect example for a lot of life lessons, but one being they lost Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar down the stretch, and it completely transformed the way that they had to win games. So to just assume that Gavin Williams' elbow will hold up or that Tanner Bibee shoulder will hold up is, I think, a folly. Now, everybody has repeated over and over again that they're not overly concerned, including the manager. I also have covered this not even this team long enough, but this season enough to know that whatever comes out of their mouth, it doesn't really matter. Like they don't want to say anything remotely revealing, so you can only go by what they do, and what they do is this has gone from pushing him back a couple days to now I think the tentative plan is he'll throw a bullpen in the next couple days, and then if all goes well, he'll be ready to start one of those games in Minnesota. But again, like until I see it with my eyes, I don't know. I don't think it's one thing to say you're not overly concerned. It's another to say that, well, here's a young starting pitcher who you're relying on to be your ace, whose shoulder is tight. Like that's just not anything you want to hear, and I don't need to be a doctor to know that you'd rather just have him feeling fine and pitching every 5 days.
And if the intent is still for him to pitch, what else would you say? You wouldn't say, "Oh, we are overly concerned, but he'll be back in a week."
Right.
Like you're going to say,
the one thing is they haven't put him on the injured list.
Yeah.
Which also is a little strange because he's going to wind up missing enough. Well, maybe not. But I guess that would be encouraging, so that you would expect him to pitch this weekend, and it's an important series for him to pitch in. And I've tried to map out the maneuvering that they can do to, you're going to have Cobb coming back. Boyd's going to get one more rehab start. At least that's the latest I've heard. You're trying to figure out where to plug in Bibee. And, oh, by the way, the doubleheader looming Friday, off day Thursday, so you get the extra player on the roster Friday. So there's just so many directions they could take this. I would think Cobb's going to start one of those games Friday. But, of course, there's just a lot of flexibility here and a lot of moving parts. And it'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out.
It would make me feel a lot better if we just saw some consistency from Gavin Williams.
Yeah.
And today, kind of more the same, where you see some good and you see some really bad. 8 strikeouts. That's some good. The fact
How
that
about
he
the velocity?
reaches back and hits 100 with the fastball today.
Yeah.
That's a good. But the fastball, while it might be good in velocity, is it good in shape? Is it good in movement? Is it good compared to what else is going on in his repertoire? Is it good in command? There's a lot at play there. And the numbers for the fastball have not been up to last year's standards for Gavin Williams in terms of stuff. It's been a lot closer prior to today to an average fastball in terms of stuff plus. Last year, it was well above average, and it was the reason why I felt so comfortable predicting big things for him this year, because I thought with an organization like Cleveland, we know they could make the secondary stuff better. We know they can sequence the hell out of making somebody a great pitcher, but when you start with an excellent baseline and a great fastball, everything just works off of that. Well, when he's coming back from his own injury scare, I don't know if is he mechanically where he needs to be? Is the release point where they ultimately wanted? Just looking at the numbers, the vertical movement has been sort of similar to where it was at last year. It's moving a little bit more horizontally. You're wondering, okay, is that somewhere in the release point? Is it somewhere in even grip and seams? He is not optimized to be the kind of pitcher we know, and we've even seen at the end of last year. How good did that man look? And it really gave me a lot of confidence heading into this year. Well, he's not that guy right now. It would probably be unfair to expect him to be that guy. And Zach, I was asking myself earlier, am I comfortable with Gavin Williams getting a playoff start right now? The answer to me is no.
You don't have a choice, my friend.
That's the second part of that. Do you have a choice? The answer is also no. So it's kind of, again, a scary place to be in terms of this rotation. Not that there isn't some good there, too. There's a lot of ceiling for him still to scratch this year. And again, even today, striking out 8, looking good at times, but it's not the full package. It's not the front of the rotation Gavin Williams that we were hoping we would see at some point.
Yeah, I don't want to make excuses for him because the stuff should be so good that he could get by. Even if he's not super sharp, the mechanics aren't there. We've heard players, even guys who have just missed spring training. I remember there was a Kipnis season where he missed, I think, most of or all of spring. And it just sets you back so much when you don't have normal ramp-up period. And then a lot of times, especially for pitchers, like Tanner Bibee was really searching in April and maybe even May, trying to figure out how to be more efficient, try to figure out how to be consistent start to start. And the main thing for a pitcher is just knowing your cues. Carl Willis always talks about the cues that tell you so you can problem solve on your own mid-start or start to start so that you know, okay, today my mechanics are a little off. This pitch isn't cutting the way I want it to. Why? What cues are telling me that this is why this is happening in a way I don't want it to happen? And you can rectify that. And it takes a lot of reps to get to that point to understand your cues because you're repeating your delivery over and over and over again, and you just understand how everything works. It becomes second nature, and when you miss the amount of time that Gavin Williams missed, he's going through these rehab starts trying to get back to it. He's focused on staying healthy and feeling good for 65 pitches at AA, not so much, that pitch didn't quite, break the way I wanted it to, and like the feedback from the hitter, but this hitter is a 19-year-old kid. It's not Anthony Santander, so I'm not like learning the same things I need to be learning. You're so far behind the eight ball. I think it's more difficult for a starting pitcher than a position player who just needs a certain number of at-bats, and then maybe you get up to a certain point that you had hoped to be at, but it's really hard. And, what is this? Was this 7 starts for him, I think? It's that would put him in at mid-May. And
yeah, today number 8, I believe.
Number 8. Okay. So, it's really difficult. I think the hope with him is there's still enough time left in the season that, you saw the velocity today. He's pumping 99, 100 past Ryan O'Hearn and Adley Rutschman, and it's like there's something there, clearly. The curveball got whacked a few times. There's
the interesting thing about that the stuff numbers have been really good with the curveball.
Yeah. So it's start to start. It's the consistency, and it's understanding why this isn't as sharp as it should be, what he's doing, and how he can self-diagnose it in the middle of an outing. And that takes time to get to. And I think the hope would be with 2 months left before the postseason, he can be rounding into form to where that's not an issue and feeling that he's at his peak performance at the perfect time when maybe other guys are dragging and you're wondering how much Bibee and Lively have left in the tank. You're wondering if Cobb and...
Sell me on it. Sell me.
Well,
yeah.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're hoping. Like you don't. Who knows what Cobb and Boyd will be able to offer? Who knows what Bibee and Lively will have left in the tank? But Gavin Williams should be the one guy who
you think
has a ton left when it matters most.
Yeah, feed me that organizational speak. I'm shovel it in my mouth. I'll accept it because I'll take any glimpse of good news here.
Or just start Cade Smith every game.
Or do that. By the way, you were right. It was 7. They have already updated the statistics. So it's the 7 starts now for Gavin Williams. I guess while I'm frustrated that it hasn't come yet, and while I have some fear that it may never come this year, I do enjoy that the velocity is there. And I feel like the velocity is at least a telltale sign that the body feels good. That he's physically where he wants, not in how the body's moving, but physically, strength-wise, that is all kind of where he wants to be. And if there's a team that can get the rest of it rectified, this is the team I want working with him on doing that.
Didn't that seem like 2 similar guys? The stuff is very different, Williams and Corbin Burnes, but just 2 throwback horses, big dudes, 6'5", 6'6", 250 pounds of just, here it is. Good luck. If you score 5 runs off Corbin Burnes, you probably want to win that day. And it didn't happen. But I don't know. We could see that in the playoffs. Well, maybe not. I don't know if they'd be lined up on the right days, but who knows? I would sign up for a sequel. I know sequels aren't usually better than the original, but
sometimes I
also don't know much about movies.
Yeah, you're not gonna listen to you too much there. Gavin's 25 years old. Think of Blake Snell, the year he's had. He's a guy that has gone to new places and struggled initially and then locked it in. And just Blake Snell right now is as locked in as you can be. And that's a veteran pitcher that has been around the block several times with multiple organizations, and it took him a long time into this year to pitch in like the guy that they paid. Gavin Williams doesn't have all that experience to fall back on. How many guys, CC Sabathia included, have come up, looked fantastic, and then sucked, and then been awful? And where was that guy that he was early when we saw him, and teams didn't know who this man was, and he was just blowing everyone away with heat? But even with guys with electric stuff, got to learn not only how to pitch, how to sequence, but how your body works. How, as you were talking about with Carl, the checkpoints and how you get back there. Stuff that only experience and reps are going to teach you. The unfortunate thing is they can't really wait for that right now. They really need A+ Gavin Williams, or really even you'll settle for B+ at this point.
I think Ben Lively is a good example for everybody. A guy who thought he would pitch for the Reds for 20 years when they drafted him in the fourth round. And then a year into his career, he gets traded to Philly. Thought he'd be there forever. Didn't work out there. Got to the majors, but they bailed on him. Bounces around to a couple places. Winds up in Korea for 3 years. And just, I mean, you could look at his stuff at any point in his career and you probably thought, maybe he's a kind of like a guy that the guys they've cycled through this season, if it's Curry, if it's even Gillespie today, just someone who can just fill innings in a lopsided game. But he has nothing to lose at this point in his career, and so why not just attack every single hitter, be relentless, even if it's only 89 miles an hour. If he can place it where he wants it to, if he can trick someone into thinking his changeup is his fastball, then he can get outs, and he's done it. And he's been so consistent this season, and it's a good example for everybody that it's great if you've got Gavin Williams stuff, if you're throwing 100 miles an hour, if you've got what on paper should be a really good secondary stuff, but it is about attacking. I mean, for Joey Cantillo, it's the same thing. It's you got to get ahead of guys. You got to throw strikes. You can't be down 2-0 in every count, because that's when, especially a team like the Orioles, that lineup does not have holes. You got to pitch from ahead and be the aggressor. And I think you've seen some of Cleveland's young pitchers get in trouble with that. I think you've seen Carlos Carrasco get in trouble with that just because maybe he doesn't trust his stuff the way he used to. So, I mean, it's crazy. I know we spend so much time every week saying, if you would have told me this back then, how would we have felt? But it's insane, the conversations we have about starting pitching now. When we were thinking, Ben Lively, okay, whatever. I don't really know what to say about this guy. Surprised I gave him a big league contract. But anyway, let's talk more about Bieber and McKenzie. Yeah, somehow this team is here despite this rotation being flipped upside down.
I mean, McKenzie, not even a thought. Nothing in my head about the future and hopes that he's going to get reclamated to help this team by the end of the season.
He did look really good the other night, finally.
Gonna need a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even the thing with Tristan. It was about consistency. That he had moments. I know in the postseason you can kind of truncate everything down, and you just maybe you envision guys able to help you in short spurts. Even a Joey Cantillo could help you in the postseason if you only have to worry about getting him through a lineup one time. But right now, I have concerns about making sure, again, you not only make the postseason, but you get that first round bye. That is so important. That is, for this team, maybe more than any other team, because they don't have that starting pitching to match up with everybody else.
Yeah, and you also get days off. I mean, if they're fighting for their lives the last week of the season, they have to lean on that bullpen quite a bit. And who knows how this shakes out, but it does seem like whoever wins the Central will get a first-round bye. The Mariners and Astros are duking it out to emerge from the division of mediocrity. So you would think that they would get the 3 seed, whoever wins that division.
Terrible AL West.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
AL Central.
Trying to, yeah.
The envy of every division in the league. The vaunted AL Central.
Yeah. See if you can win that division.
Ignore the White Sox, who are 60 games below 500. Yeah, I mean, it's you would think the winner would get a first-round bye, maybe even the number 1 overall seed, which would come in handy. And you get a few days off before the division series. So that could help, too. Let Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis get a breather before you use them, I don't know, 2 innings every game?
Get ready to speak 50 pitches, bro.
Yeah.
Every single night. Just hand him tape of Andrew Miller and Cody Allen and just say, this is your life. Get used to it, brother.
They want that, though. I mean, the fact that...
Sure.
Yeah, we know Class A. Vogt talks about it all the time. Class A wants to pitch if they're down, if they're up big, not just in save situations. If it's been 3 days and he hasn't gotten out there, he will go to the manager's office and say, hey, don't forget about me. I'm pitching tonight. And, Cade Smith has embraced this fireman's role. We thought it was Nick Sandlin at the beginning of the year. He got injured. He's been shaky since coming back, and Cade Smith has taken this and not looked back. And even Austin Hedges said he thinks Cade Smith's the second best reliever in baseball behind his teammate, the closer, and it's hard to argue. Just the leverage he's pitched in, and he even made the point, there's a lot of guys who look out for themselves, and they only want to pitch in the 7th or 8th if they can't pitch the 9th. But Cade Smith has no problem coming in the 5th, in the 4th, whenever, getting some huge outs. And he's not arbitration eligible for a couple years. Like, he's not going to reap the benefits of this anytime soon. So it's incredibly impressive, and that is a huge weapon in the playoffs that outside of Cleveland, I don't know how many people know about Cade Smith and what he's done. I have no idea how the Rookie of the Year race is going to shake out.
I was just looking at that.
I don't have the candidates in front of me, but I do wonder if people are paying attention to him and to Hunter Gaddis and to Tim Herron. I mean, they have 4 relievers with a sub-2 ERA in August. That's insane.
All these guys with barely any major league experience.
None of them were supposed to be on the roster on opening day.
In the case of Gaddis, forget about major league experience, any relieving experience to draw upon, really, before this year. And here are these guys helping lead the charge. Yeah, Rookie of the Year, interesting. There's Colton Cowser, who we've just seen in this series. Austin Wells is up in WAR. Abreu with Boston is up in WAR. So all those guys have above a 2 at Fangraphs. So that's the position player side. And I always feel like position players, those everyday players, they get that nice little boost in the Rookie of the Year when you got to factor in both elements here, unlike MVP and Cy Young. And then there's Luis Gil with the Yankees, who has been very, very good. 3.20 ERA through 21 starts. And then second, or tied for second, is Cade Smith and Mason Miller. But Mason Miller, of course, is going to draw a lot of headlines because there's just been that aura around him.
Yeah, but he's also been hurt. Yeah, and I don't know, I don't know how closely voters in Phoenix are paying attention to Cade Smith's work escaping 1st and 3rd with nobody out in the 5th inning of a Tuesday night game against the Royals. So I don't know. It seems like an uphill climb.
Okay, well let's look at these two, Cade Smith and Mason Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Who's having the better relief season? I don't care about when the guy's pitching. Maybe I should.
Should you?
Maybe I should, considering how many times has Cade Smith come out early into a jam and help them escape, and that might have been the most critical element or critical time of the game. But I'll take that away.
How often is Oakland in that sort of scenario anyway? I know Mason Miller pitches the 9th, but It's not like they're...
I could argue that their wins are more valuable because they have fewer of them.
That's true.
there's a certain pressure there because you might not get another chance to get a W this week.
Can you imagine being the White Sox closer?
No, I can't.
Oh, here's my save opportunity of the month.
Get like 20 innings pitched the entire season. Cade Smith has a 1.86 ERA compared to Mason Miller, who's at 2.21. If you're looking at expected earned run average, courtesy of some StatCast numbers, Mason Miller has the edge here, 1.50 to 2.34. If we're looking at FIP, Cade Smith has the advantage of 1.42 versus Mason Miller, 1.72. Now, Cade Smith has the advantage in innings. He's at 53 1/3 compared to Mason Miller, who's only at 40 2/3 innings. So if you're looking at body of work in terms of how much a guy has pitched, Cade Smith has the edge there. Fascinating. I think Mason Miller is going to get a lot of love. I don't know how much time he will have missed, but if you're looking at who deserves it, I think it might actually be Cade Smith over Mason Miller.
You know what's funny is I remember the opening series of the season, and I remember we were talking about Rookie of the Year before then, and we were talking about Manzardo and when it made most sense to call him up and whether he could factor into the Rookie of the Year race and if that would influence the team's thinking, because obviously if you, as they learned with Tanner Bibee last year, you get a full year of service time if you finish top 2 in the Rookie of the Year race. So I remember I said on our podcast that Mason Miller was someone to watch. And I hadn't done a ton of research. I knew he threw really hard and he was going to be Oakland's closer. But I remember the opening series, Mason Miller came in and he was just throwing 101. And I remember being like, whoa. Like, I threw that name out there because he had good stuff and they were going to try him out at closer and maybe he would just mow guys down. I didn't know it looked like this. And then Cade Smith came in and made his debut. And it was like a nice feel-good story because he wasn't supposed to make the team. He found out the morning of opening day. His family was there. They were all posing for pictures because he hadn't seen his siblings or his parents in over a year. His dad had been through heart surgery. It was such a great story. And then you're thinking, man, if he doesn't make the roster, boy, it's great that he got to see his family, but why are they in Oakland? And are they all going to travel together back to Columbus? And then he makes the roster. He enters in maybe the second or third game, 2 innings. I think he retired all 6 guys he faced and struck out 5. And I remember David Fry telling me recently they were thinking the same thing. They're like, Cade Smith had really good stuff in spring training, but he was in limbo. They didn't know if he was going to be in the team. And Fry goes, yeah, and then he came in, he struck out 5 in his major league debut, and we're like, all right, yeah, he's staying. It was everybody knew he was good, but then you see it play against big league hitters on a big league field when the stakes matter, and it's like, okay, you got something here. And I mean, he's had 2 slip-ups all season. I mean, all those guys have. Hunter Gaddis, you remember specifically when Hunter Gaddis screwed up because it happens so infrequently. And the way that those guys, it is 3 rookies, even though Herron and Gaddis have had some big league experience, none of them were supposed to make the roster. We're supposed to be talking about James Karinchak. And he's been nowhere to be found. It was supposed to be Lively in the bullpen and or Curry, and then all these guys get sick and you have injuries, and it's just, Hench just went down, and they've been unbelievable, and their slip-ups have just, they don't happen. Or they happen when it's they're up 6-3 and they give up a run. So it doesn't even matter. It's been incredible.
Yeah, Herron gets some damage to him today, but partially not his fault because it's Sandlin that's later giving up the damage. I was looking at win probability added. So this one last ways I could maybe break the tie between Miller and Cade Smith, who is having the more impressive rookie relief season. Mason Miller is at 2.14, leading the charge in win probability added. Cade Smith, surprise, surprise, second at 2 exactly. So they're right there in almost every statistic. It's just ultimately what are their inning pitch total at the end of the year? What do those look like? That's going to help separate it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing for the Guardians too, is how much can you push these guys? You said Cade Smith's already at 53. You typically want to keep a reliever to like 70-ish, 75 is push. I mean, Brian Shaw in his heyday was in the mid-70s every year, and he was leading the league in appearances with like 77. I think he had an 80 one year, 76. So you don't want to push these guys too hard, especially since you're also going to need them in October. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance that for the next 2 months.
I knew that this was the case, but I had forgotten momentarily why he was injured. Then I remembered, oh yeah, he broke his pinky because he was mad about working out, as the story goes.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? Do you buy that story?
Never believe any of those.
I never
Still
believe.
waiting to see the shirt that somehow broke Zach Plesac's pinky.
Oh, no. What I can believe and what I think is the most predictable element is Eloy Jimenez going anywhere but Chicago and immediately contributing. Like, that was the easiest thing. Anybody leaves the White Sox, I'm going to put money down on them having some big career turnaround. Because what are the White Sox doing? Not only in the moves that they make, but how they handle their players. They have had so many talented players come in there, and just nobody has lived up to their hype.
It's not the perfect example because there's so much dysfunction there, and I think that dysfunction's always been there. But it is a reminder that you may think you've got this dynasty brewing, and you're really good this year, and it's the beginning, and you're going to be really good for 5-6 years, and it's just, you never know. You never know how it could crumble. There's no guarantee you'll be back. And we thought the White Sox were going to have this reign of terror atop the AL Central, and they'd win a championship or two, and they'd be a playoff threat every year. And they went out with a whimper, man. They never got to an ALCS. Do they have a single, memorable playoff moment? That era will be defined by two things. One, Tim Anderson's walk-off home run in a cornfield, and two, Jose Ramirez's walk-off knockout punch of Tim Anderson. That's it. And it's just a reminder, the Cubs won the World Series here, and I think everybody thought that was going to be something that happened a few times with that group. And they kind of hung around, but there's just no guarantee that you will ever make it back. And I think we see that in baseball year after year. There are examples of that.
That's why CC Sabathia still talks about 2007 to this day, feeling like he let the entire organization and city down.
Yeah.
And I can understand why you feel that way. For a guy that put so much on his big, broad shoulders in his time here and did so many great things, for him, it ultimately comes down to failing in the biggest moment.
Which is a shame. His story is just so great. Do you remember him at 20 years old as a rookie?
I do, yeah.
And what's crazy is that rotation, which was hanging on by a thread at that point in 2001, it had Chuck Finley, who was 38. Sabathia's 20, half his age. Dave Burba was 34. That roster, the position players were getting older too. It was such a weird dynamic. CC really embodying that next wave of talent. It was fun. It was fun talking to him. He is so insightful. I asked him, because his oldest child now is 20, junior at college, and I said, can you imagine him being a rookie in the major leagues right now? He said no, because he would hang around in the clubhouse CC's last few years in New York, and his son was closer in age to Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres and whoever else than CC was. So it was always a weird dynamic. I feel like those teams kind of get lost because there was no piggybacking. Like CC was a rookie in 01, finishes second in the Rookie of the Year race to Ichiro, and then they weren't good in 02 and 03, and they started to turn the corner in 04, and then 05, it looked like here they are. They've arrived. 93 wins, choked in the last week of the season. Otherwise, with that rotation and bullpen, who knows what they could have done in the playoffs. But then 06, they took a step back. And then 07, we know what happened. And then 08, they took a step back, and they felt like they had to trade CC, and that was it. So it's just, it's such a weird era. And I don't know like how memorable it is to fans. But that 07 team, they would have won the World Series. And I think CC knows it.
I mean, it's not quite the same as what we were just talking about with the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no momentum ever built. You go back to 16, yeah, through a lot of 17, it didn't feel like there had been momentum. But when you take a step back and you see 16, 17, 18, there's a consistency there. And yeah, you didn't ultimately win a championship, but you remember all of that. For that team, there is the greatness of experiencing getting to so close to getting back to the World Series, but there's just those ultimate disappointments and choke jobs that really kind of cloud how you feel about those groups. And there were some truly great players in there, and Victor Martinez and Grady Sizemore, and I mean, guys, Travis Hafner at the peak of his powers. These are the best players in the game at that time. And they had some bad luck, of course. I think sprinkled in there too, they just had some really awful sequencing and really poorly timed injuries. Not that injuries are ever greatly timed. And then you have 07, and that's why that sticks with CC, because you're in a position to get back to the World Series, and you have your pitching staff set up exactly how you would draw it up. At the end of the day, everybody kind of pooped the bed, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it could have been his crowning season of his career. I know he'd go on to accomplish great things in New York, win a World Series with the Yankees, but he won the Cy Young in 07. That was he had shown flashes. I mean, he had been a workhorse, but that was the first time where it was like, this is the ace, this is the guy you want on the mound in a playoff game, and he could have had it all. He could have be the ace of this team, win the Cy Young Award, win a World Series, and he fell short in that last most important part. But it's always interesting. I mean, it's been 16 years since he pitched in Cleveland, and I was looking at it because it was Manny Ramirez came back to town for the induction ceremony. Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome. Manny never played with him. Thome played with him for a year or 2 years. Kenny Lofton, who played with him in 01 and then in 07 for the last few months. Charles Nagy played with him at the very end of his career. Sandy Alomar never played with him. And Andre Thornton, who definitely never played with him. And Carlos Baerga, who never played with him. So it was a weird mix. And it just shows you the eras, just how different those were. And how CC really is he connected the very end of the 90s group with the next wave. But it's been so long since he was here, you almost.
Yeah.
And because so many of those years were forgettable, it's easy to forget just how reliable he was for so long.
The longevity and the just soaking up innings. It's incredible just looking at the statistics for his career and seeing the number of not just reaching 200 innings. Today, 200 innings is oh my God, what a Superman, what a heroic effort. This dude's oh, you want me to throw 240? Sure. 253? Yeah. Absolutely. Why not? Let's do it. I mean, he just 237. Every year in his career up to when he had 14, when he only threw 46 innings, this dude just threw pretty much 200 innings every year. You just counted on it. And even early in his career with Cleveland, who you're kind of alluding to earlier, you were expecting him to make the jump to instantly ascend to ace level status, and it didn't happen initially. It was
Which is okay because he was 20.
Right.
He's so young.
His rookie year, in the second year, it's like at the age of 21, he's like, again, it's all right. And there was a lot of, while the team was still trying to figure out what they were going to be leading up to 05, he was still kind of that as a pitcher, figuring out how good is this man going to be, in addition to just giving you tons and tons of innings. But it's that consistency year to year throughout his career that I will remember him for. Just, this dude was the horse of all horses. You could just throw whatever you wanted to, and he was just going to give you whatever he had.
And I think that makes him an interesting case for when he joins the Hall of Fame ballot this winter. And I asked him, I said two things. I said, one, like, how much pride did you take in being that workhorse? Because we don't see that anymore. And there were a lot, but it was also, like you said, it was the expectation. And what's incredible, like that frame held up for a long time, and then he reinvented himself, and he wasn't pumping 97 past guys. He was using his secondary stuff. He was being crafty and placing 92 at the perfect spot. And he did change his frame so that he could last in this league for 19 years, I think. So, and then I asked him, just like, the Hall of Fame ballot, how much that actually means to him. And he said a lot. And I think we are, at least I know for me, felt like in the 90s, the baseball I grew up on, everybody was larger than life. Like, I expect hitters to just hit 300 with 500 home runs and 3,000 hits, because there were so many of those guys when we were growing up, even if they were doing it in a little bit of a manufactured manner, right? And with pitchers, it was just, Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson and Tom Glavine and Pedro Martinez did this, so that's what I expect a Hall of Fame pitcher to look like. And I think CC's ERA ended up being like 3.74, but you see, I know wins don't matter to you or I, but 251 wins speaks to this guy being a workhorse.
I mean, it's tough to get to 251 wins being terrible. And
when you look at 251 wins and 3,500 innings and 3,000 strikeouts, I don't know how many guys are going to get to those numbers in the future. And I think that's why you have to reevaluate, reset your standards. And, CC's going to get in. It'll be interesting to see if he gets in first ballot. But I just don't think we're going to see a ton of guys like that anymore. I mean, you look at Corbin Burns and Gavin Williams, to take this full circle, like, those are guys you think in a perfect world can go 200 innings and rack up 200 strikeouts. But it's not easy for them either.
How was the energy at the park on Saturday? I know it was great on the earlier in the series, but
I mean, they got 33,000 to Progressive Field on Sunday. You don't see that. They're at 12 sellouts. The energy, the atmosphere has been awesome all season. It's been incredible. And hey, I don't know that Monday's going to be a sellout. It's a Monday night game against the Diamondbacks, but it is the 23-year anniversary of the greatest comeback of all time. CC Sabathia was on that team.
Wow. We ever talked about that game?
There might be a very long episode of this podcast where we dive into that.
Oh, I don't know, maybe you have to search for that. The atmosphere down the street was pretty good too.
Yeah. Who won the championship belt?
Everybody.
Oh. They
were all up for grabs at SummerSlam. 57,000 people in attendance. It was definitely a time and day to remember. I'm not going to bore everybody with the details, but it was a good time, and I know what people will care about. Cleveland was put in an extremely good light. The man that runs the show now, people may be familiar with Triple H, had nothing but great things to say about the city and how it was handled. I think people are familiar somewhat with The Miz. The Miz had a lot of fun embracing Cleveland. The only person that tried to embrace Cleveland and was actually spit back out was Logan Paul, but everybody else.
Oh, no, what a shame.
Good time.
That's great to hear. I'm also expecting 57,000 people in attendance at Loganberry Books Monday night, where I'll be talking guards, talking 95, Tribe, and whatever else.